Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark session. I'm your host, Brent Spirit, here live on Zoom. We've got 24 in the Zoom room, a few tuning in on YouTube as well. Tonight, we've got a live interactive conversation all about the Kundalini awakening process. In particular, I want to unpack a little bit of a theme that I'm going through lately, which essentially comes down to what do you do when you see God's hand in your life? It's obvious, it's clear, and yet you can't fully let it in, let it land, surrender, allow that presence of the divine to fully take over. So that's something that I've been chewing on lately myself, and I want to unpack that a little bit with you, and maybe that will spark some conversation for others in the community to contribute to. But nonetheless, this is Kundalini After Dark, so the idea is we meet together to share in community about this process. So whatever comes up for you tonight, it's all welcome. We'll have some time for some questions, for some answers from the community. We'll have some time to celebrate, to share, to vent, to share resources, and to be in the company of one another. So thank you all so much for all of your support, for being here, for tuning in. If you're tuning in the archive, the links are in the description to join the next Kundalini After Dark meeting. You can also find the link to join the next Kundalini Q&A meeting, also on Zoom. Also a great time. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate all of your support. So before we get into it here, just a reminder here that we're not here to discuss any medical advice, and this isn't a substitute for professional counseling or psychotherapy. It's just a spiritual conversation on the internet. Okay. So this idea, when we see God's hand or the goddess's hand in our life and, not really being able to really let it land fully, this is something that, like I said, I've been chewing on lately. Of course, as you know, if you've been listening to any of my messages for some time, this idea of developing a relationship with the divine is so key in my approach, in my paradigm, right? In yoga, there's this idea of having what we call an Ishta Devata, an Ishta Devi or an Ishta Deva, which is a particular form of the divine that you practice a great devotion to, a great surrender to. You develop a relationship with your Ishta Devata, with your form of the divine. And this serves as a relationship that can support you through this process, through the process of yoga, through the development of your spirituality. It can serve as a bridge between the worldly and into the formless. So we use, these depictions of the divine as a bridge in a sense. They are often, they take the form of a body. They have arms, sometimes many arms to serve you, to support you. They have a mouth, they have ears to communicate with you, to hear you, right? So this is why these forms exist. And of course, my approach is to really develop a relationship with a form of the divine in whatever way you feel. And it doesn't have to be from a particular tradition like, yoga or Hinduism. That's very common, of course. Some of the most sophisticated systems are, come out of India, out of the East. You could even develop a relationship with Mother Nature, right? Some may refer to it as your higher self, with God the Father, the Holy Spirit, right? So many different ways, but some idea of a relationship with something greater than just your ego, just your ego mind, right? Something a little bit more all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful that you can relate with. And of course, it's not something out there in the sky. Ultimately, any depiction of the divine, if you ask me, it's a mirror of our own inner qualities, right? Our own inner qualities, right? So yoga means union with the divine. So we're coming into union with this, recognizing that we've always been in connection with it, moving through any ideas of separation. But we do have to sometimes have this idea of a deity out there, a God out there, some sort of divine presence out there that we relate to, and like I was saying earlier, that we try to surrender to. So, of course, this is a major theme in my journey. It has been since the very beginning, since I got this idea that we could even talk to this intelligence of Kundalini Shakti within us so we can have a bit of a dialogue. That opened up this whole paradigm for me that there's some intelligent force that I can relate with here. And then I began to develop this relationship, to pray, to talk to it, to turn to it, to even get upset at times with it, to say, how can you be doing this? How can you be putting me through such difficulty? right? And I found it to be very, very helpful. I was listening to a talk the other day, and somebody was mentioning a little bit about Gopi Krishna. And Gopi Krishna, if you're not familiar, he's a great he put out a lot of great research about Kundalini awakening um, after going through a very, very difficult process himself. So many, many books, he sparked a whole movement. He was very influential in spreading the idea out of India to the West. And somebody that I was listening to, part of what they were saying was the reason that he had such a difficult awakening process was because he didn't have an Ishta Devata to turn to. He was just kind of doing it all on his own and not really understanding this idea of developing a relationship. If you don't have that in your paradigm, it may contribute to a very difficult time, right? And I found that working with so many people, if they have a strong relationship with God, more or less, they're all clear. They're going to figure it out. But if they don't, it's going to be a tough ride. It really is. And so sometime last year, I had a difficult time in my life, a difficult um, crossroads, if you will. And I felt, I don't know which way to turn. I felt like I was in control and I had to pick the right direction to move. And it was so troubling for me. It was so troubling for me. And I turned to the Divine Mother, Shakti, the goddess. This is the way that I like to relate with the divine, my Ishta Devi, if you will, the many forms of the divine. And I said, I'm going to do my best to make the right decision, but I'm coming to you and I'm not really getting anything from you. I don't really getting any clear guidance. So I'm just letting you know I've consulted you, I've considered you in this decision, and I'm not hearing anything. And so I'm going to make the decision I'm going to make, and I let it go. Well, at night before bed, I was really in a difficult place. I cried out. I said, I need some help. I need some guidance. I need some clarity. Nothing came. I fell asleep. Suddenly I was awoken and I sat up in bed and I hear the voice of the Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine, and she says, "You are always in my lap. You're always in my lap." And a great peace washed over me. And I knew that wherever I thought I was going, actually it was her carrying me there. I'm sitting in her lap and she's taking me wherever she's going to take me. And I knew at that moment, as that peace washed over me, that I was always in the right place. And yet, of course, as many of us must know, we have these experiences. In that moment, it feels total, it feels complete, it feels unforgettable, totally no resistance. Then as time goes on, maybe it slips through our fingers a little bit. Maybe some older parts come back up and they creep up and they're a little bit out of alignment with some of these great realizations we may have had. And of course, this has been my experience. And I think this whole journey is essentially how deeply can I remember that I'm always in the lap of the mother? How deeply? And so that's what's been coming up for me lately. It's been coming up for me lately. So what got me thinking about this was there's this great tension within me lately. A few weeks ago, I had a dream, and in this dream, I saw a hummingbird and I saw a leopard. Don't have too many dreams with animals like that. Every now and then I do, but anyway, I woke up from this dream, talked with my girlfriend in the morning, and she says, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to Costa Rica. Would you like to come?" I said, okay, sure. Yeah, sounds pretty good. I'm not too sure, but okay. Well, then a few hours later, I remembered, hey, I had this dream of this hummingbird and this leopard. Let me look up if this has anything to do with Costa Rica. And I see the hummingbird is actually the national animal of Costa Rica, and they have leopards there in the jungle. So I said, that's so interesting. Okay, I've never been there before. Looks like I'm some nudge to go. Okay, so we confirm, book this trip, head out there, find an Airbnb through a friend. Well, turns out the Airbnb is owned by a yoga teacher, and she's dubbed her Airbnb the Devi Mandir, the Devi Mandir. So here I am staying in the Devi Mandir with my girlfriend. Mandir, of course, being a sort of sacred site, a temple, right, for the Devi. So I just find myself literally in the temple of the Devi, of the mother, totally in the flow. So this is what I mean by seeing God's hand, the goddess's hand in my life, calling me, guiding me, giving me the dreams, giving me the invitations, literally putting me up in the best place in her home. Anyway, go to a friend's place in the jungle, beautiful, beautiful, like a villa that they had just built in the jungle, and they're leading a meditation. And we arrive in their new meditation hall gathering space. And on the wall, there's this huge, beautiful painting of Pachamama with all of these various symbols and animals all around. And I see there in her heart, it's the green hummingbird. And sitting on her head is the leopard. And so I'm looking up at this and I'm thinking, wow, I'm really in the exact place that I need to be. This is incredible. And yet, what came out in that moment was actually a part that said, no, you're not. This is crazy. And you have to be in control and stop keep letting it all go up to the flow and up to, the plan of the divine. And so this tension arose in me where I'm seeing all of this happening. And mind you, this happens to me quite literally on a daily basis, stuff like this every single day, multiple times a day. And yet still there's parts of me that feel, we have to control, Brent. You've got to make sure that you control and you fight and you resist and steer the ship yourself. And so there's this incredible tension where I see it so clearly, and yet some other parts of me are lagging behind, if you will, right? They're operating on old information, and they got me through things prior to all this awakening stuff, prior to all this spirituality stuff, when I didn't have an Ishta Devi to turn to. This controlling part got me through, right? Pull through, right? And so here they are, still there, still kicking a little bit, and it brings up this tension, this inner tension. And so, what do we do with these parts? What do we do with these parts? And I think this is the question of surrender to God, surrender to the divine, surrender to the flow, right? We get these ideas to let go and let God. And we see, okay, clearly I have enough evidence to do so. It makes sense to do so. I've never been let down. Things go so magically when I do. And yet still there's something that's just not ready. So I really started to sit with this part and inquired, where is it in my body? Just got quiet. So I just get into a meditative state, get into a curious state, open state, compassionate state, looking for the parts to identify them, but not to criticize them or give them a hard time, just to recognize them actually. So just become calm. You just ask, where in your body do you feel a particular part? Maybe it's a resistant part, a scared part, a protective part, a controlling part. And I found it's in my chest, and it's actually just a very small sort of in the center of my chest. That's where he lives. And of course, we can talk to these parts too. We can ask them, say, what is it that you need? And so sometimes, maybe in a case like mine, a part like that may say, I need more evidence. Okay, that would make sense, be rational. You need more evidence. Okay, okay. Maybe more reassurance, right? So I asked this part, what do you need? And what he said was, I just need more time. I just need more time. He said, I see all the evidence. It makes so much sense. God is in your life. You are taken care of, supported. You can let go. You don't have to be in so much control. I see it, but I just need a bit more time to chew on all the data to really let it land. I just need a bit more time, right? And I said, okay, that makes perfect sense. He said, I want to trust. I just need a bit more time, right? It's like, you want to make a big purchase. I want to make the big purchase. I'm ready. I just need to sleep on it. I just need to sleep on it. That's basically what he was saying. He's like, I'm probably going to go with this, but just let me sleep on it a little bit. And I think that's completely fair. I think it's completely fair, right? So he just needed a bit more time. Just needed a bit more time. Now, if I were to try and pressure this part, just let go, just surrender, just trust. What happens when you pressure somebody into a deal, right? They actually don't want to trust you, right? They're like, whoa, why are you getting so pushy? Why are you getting so pushy? Now their guard is up. Now they hold on a bit more, right? So whenever there's a part that comes up that's in resistance, it's a little afraid, we have to approach them with care. See, what do they need? What do they need? And give them all the time that they need. And I think that's completely, completely reasonable. And so that's what I'm doing with myself live. Like, this is stuff that I've just been working through in the past few hours, getting this data that he really just needs patience. Despite, like I said, years of seeing all this evidence, still he says, no, I'm not fully ready to totally let go and surrender. Not fully ready, right? And I think the same goes for the way that the divine sees us on this path. Sometimes I think we feel like God is sitting there getting impatient with us because we haven't fully trusted or surrendered or let go, or we haven't developed the faith. And God is getting impatient. I don't think so at all. I really don't think so. I think God completely understands how scary this is. I think God completely understands that we are being called to a completely different paradigm and way of operating outside of our mind, moving into our heart or trusting in our higher self or trusting in the flow. I think God's like, yeah, that is horrifying. And there's no pressure from us, from the divine, for you to join us in the flow all at once today, this moment. Take as much time as you need. And that's the compassionate part of God, right? And so we can also be that way with ourselves. And like I said, when we approach it that way, I think those parts relax. They say, I'm not feeling pressured. I feel safe. Now I can trust this more, right? Because if they don't feel safe, they're not trusting anyway, right? And the whole idea is to know that we're safe with God, right? So pressure and safety in this situation don't go together, right? Maybe in all situations, they don't go together. I think as well, there's an energetic component where our tiny little human nervous systems, these vessels here, just can't take the energetic surge that would come if this part, for example, in my chest, it serves as a bit of a resistor, as a bit of a thing that kind of governs the system from getting overclocked and going too fast. And I think that's pretty reasonable as well. If these parts were just completely gone and our system wasn't yet acclimated to the energy flow, like you could, maybe quote unquote go crazy or get fried or get so burnt out that you just get so tired or something like that. Or it could be just too much for the system in some way or another, right? Some way or another. And I think this is what happens with psychedelics, right? With psychedelics, people go on a trip and some of those parts that are kind of in the way, managing the experience, managing the energy flow in the nervous system, they get overridden. And then suddenly the system gets flooded and now a person becomes very unstable, very ungrounded, and of course other challenges can arise, right? Other challenges can arise. So I think it's appropriate that we acknowledge the energetics of all of this, the energetics when it comes to letting go and letting God and surrender and trust. Like that's a lot for our little nervous systems, and I think taking time is useful, right? We can have spiritual insight in a flash. You can see synchronicity and say, yeah, God is really here, calling me, beckoning me in my life, present. You can see it directly, but your body needs a bit more time, right? The body's more dense, the nervous system's more dense, it takes more time. The mind can see it immediately. The body takes time. Body takes time. And I think that's where self-care comes in, really being with ourselves, soothing ourselves, talking to our body and saying it's completely okay at your own pace, right? So trust and surrender, letting go and letting God, allowing God's hand in your life. I don't think it has to happen in a single event where it's one and done, where we just let go and just for forever and ever, we're just totally in the flow. I think it can happen moment to moment, briefly, maybe just a little bit of a relaxation, a little bit of trust. Maybe not in the full picture, but just in this moment, right? We do experience it, right? You trust that your heart's going to beat its next beat. You trust your next breath is going to come, it's going to go, right? So even in this moment, you can just trust that you're supported by the furniture, right? The more that we can relax into those feelings of trust, I think over time we can build it up to points where we can really let go and trust. And then, of course, that translates over into, when we're going through really, really difficult things as we go through this process, we can know that it's not happening in vain. We're not being hurt or victimized by life, that God is actually there holding us. We are in God's lap, in the lap of the Divine Mother or the Divine Father or whatever you'd like to think of it as. We are held. We are held. And they're so compassionate, understanding that they are even more than willing to let us feel as if we're not held and they'll still hold us, right? You can kick, you can scream, you can deny. And I think God's like, yeah, no problem. That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense that you would deny me. I think that's how compassionate God is. And that's what I'm beginning to really see. And I'm practicing being more gentle with myself as I let my nervous system catch up to all of this. And I want to share that with you openly, right? I'm here, doing this, leading this this meeting and talking about developing a relationship with the Divine Mother, but this is my relationship. This is where I'm at, right? It's rocky at times. It's rocky at times, and we come up to areas where we have an edge and we have to grow together. And I think she's totally supportive of that. And so I don't want you to feel like, whenever I'm talk about any of this, that, I'm just here flowing by, like totally just in it and like I either don't know what it's like to struggle or I've forgotten. No, no, I'm doing the same, right? I'm doing the same. And it's humbling. It's very humbling, very, very humbling. So I thank you for helping me to unpack this live. It feels great to just talk it out. And I'm curious to see what others have to say about this theme today. Some links in the description, like I mentioned, for those listening in the archive to join us for the next meeting. Okay, let's hear from Jay.
Hey, Brent.
Hey, Jay.
Thanks so much. Sorry, a little bit out of breath. Yeah, I really appreciated the share, Brent, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of the same things that I'm doing in terms of talking to different parts of the human psyche that are still resistant to letting go. And I've been doing a lot of work on that. I feel like I've integrated a lot of the non-dual realization over the course of the last 10 years. But there are these parts, like you referenced, that are afraid of letting go. And it's interesting because I feel like now the spiritual landscape has this influx of psychological knowledge. And it's not just kind of like the guru sitting on his throne, exasperated, like, why are you still believing yourself? Like, how many times do you have to tell you that there's nobody there, right? And then now we have this knowledge of like, okay, well, maybe telling the self, like, shame, shame, you don't exist, it doesn't work. Like, let's compassionately talk to these parts and ask why you're afraid to let go. And that's been something that's like this dichotomy. There's just continuously opening and opening and opening and, being in that visceral sense of no one here, vast spacious awareness. And then also when these parts don't want to let go, kind of inquiring. And what I found very helpful is not only the kind of IFS, like asking what it needs, but like identifying like what's the limiting belief that it believes that it feels it needs to believe so that it's safe, right? So like for example, like if I like if we fully let go of control, is that okay? And often these parts have this belief like if I fully let go of control, I'll be destroyed because there were times when I didn't have control and terrible things happened, right? And like part of this practice that I'm doing is then like I identifying that limiting belief, that core limiting belief, and then like asking my deepest truth, like getting down deeper into the body, like what does my deepest knowing say about this? Right? And my deepest knowing will say, there is only God and everything will be fine. And then like when it comes from like a real deep knowing, and I just bring that back up to the part and be like, hey, this is what we actually believe. Like, what do you think? Right. And I was doing that for a few months. Hold on one second. I had to close my door because there are non-spiritual people outside. I don't want them to hear any stray spiritual thoughts.
Completely
cause
understand.
cause a non-consensual perspective shift. Yeah, and what was I saying? Yeah, and so I've been doing that, and then like what's like alive for me now, and I don't want this to sound like I've got it all figured out and like I'm totally chill because I've got on a psychological level, there's like a mess here, which but as more and more clarity, happens, there's just much less noise and a kind of more divine feeling in the somatics. It's just clear. It's just like there's nobody here. Like there's no God outside. There's no God outside and there's no me inside. There's just divinity everywhere. And there's a time and place for sure, like you were saying, Brian, and I believe it's true, of having like this personal relationship with God, a deity, a divine sense, but fundamentally knowing like God is what's living through this body. God is what's looking out through these eyes. Like when like when my OCD is kicking up and my overreactive fear response is just like just got my brain on fire and I'm afraid of every little thing. Like when I clear up out of that, like I'll look back and be like, that was God struggling with a nervous system that's fucked up. Right. And when it was doubting, that was God doubting that it was God. But it was also digesting all the food. It was, miraculously moving every single cell in the body to where it needed to be. Like, like it's an absolute miracle that's happening every single step of the way. And this letting go is like it's gotten to a place where it's like there's a choice to let go. It's like there's like a choice that the body and the mind doesn't have to pick up the separate self. Like this desire to figure it out. It's like, okay, I don't have to pick it up. The desire to know what's going to happen next. I don't have to pick it up. I can stay in this not knowing, being nobody, because what's moving this body is ultimate intelligence, ultimate benevolence. Like I don't have to figure anything out. And if a desire comes up in me, outflowing to like call out to a personal God, that's God calling out to the personal God,
Mm.
right? And this deeper trust of it's like, okay, I'm just like in pain right now. I just don't know what's going on. But it's like a complete resting can happen in this chaos because this is God. Like the ultimate benevolence, the ultimate intelligence, like this is what it's manifesting. Then this is the best it can possibly happen.
Mm.
And then just letting it move the body. Yeah. And so that's just where I'm at right now. And just was very resonant with what you were saying. So I just felt like sharing that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really feeling what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you. Yeah, the what comes to me is the process to God is God. The path to God is God.
Yeah.
Eh, That's the joke of it. It can be frustrating, it can be amazing, it can be everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. What a relief to know, like, whatever we're experiencing through this process is not a mistake. It's totally right. Even the discomfort, confusion, it's what God wants to experience through us
Exactly.
in this moment. Yeah,
hmm
beautiful. Very soothing. Thank you so much, Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Allison adds, your doubt is part of the journey. The answer to doubt is not necessarily knowing, but accepting not knowing. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, the struggle is part of it too. Struggle is part of it too. I was having a conversation yesterday, and we were talking about the first initiation of life is a struggle through birth, through the birth canal. It's a struggle, right? It's part of it. It's not a mistake. It is the initiation. It's what begins to equip us for life, that initial struggle. So interesting. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, let's hear from Tom.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hi,
Hi,
Tom.
Brett. Good to see you. Um,
Likewise.
I was thinking yesterday about um, it was the same theme that we were talking about letting letting the goddess or God, whatever, do what's necessary and accepting it or not. And I remember many years ago when I first started Kundalini yoga, I spontaneously went into witness consciousness, the awareness of being not my ego, but something else, but could still work with the ego to get things done. And it happened going on for about a month, and then it changed back again and to my normal consciousness. But I wasn't happy about. Then about a year later, it happened again for a few weeks, and so forth. And I understand um, now that one of the reasons I couldn't stay there was I hadn't done the practices properly. I hadn't prepared myself to stay in that rarefied atmosphere of being that. And without that preparation of like there are exercises you can do to maintain Witness consciousness, then when one shifts or is one is shifted, it's easier to hang on to it. Um, so that's, you know, it's there for us, but to stay there, I think we have to do the work. Otherwise, as you said, you end up being fried, which is a spontaneous human combustion, metaphorical way, or maybe a real way. I'm not sure. But yeah, just and then someone had written something about Shiva coming down and doing things, and I had my response to it was, "That's interesting because I mean, Shiva is generally looked at as potential energy, and Shakti then as kinetic energy. So Shiva does nothing, Shakti does everything. He has, I guess, out of Shiva come impulses or pulsations of some, I don't know what, but then Shakti takes that and makes it into things. That's he watches while she dances. So I'm not sure about if I'm right about that, but that's the way I've always understood it. That the masculine energy is the energy, and she works with that and creates. Uh, anyhow, just wanted to, if anyone has anything to clarify about that, love to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. Yeah, if others have something to add to that, please let us know. But yeah, you're so right. Spiritual practices, of course, absolutely essential, right? We can have the realization God is real. Ah, okay. The nervous system often isn't going to just go along with that, right? We need to soothe the system that may want to resist and want to be in control all the time. Yeah. So practice is so key. So key. And that's what I'm finding, like even in the meditation for me, for example, when I'm speaking about this part in my chest, just meditating and being with it and feeling it and seeing if I can bring some loving kindness to this area, some degree of using spiritual practice to soothe a part that's scared, right? Yeah. Thanks so much, Tom.
Also, just add to that, it's for myself right now. It's very frustrating because I mean I had just recently had a dream in which the three main gurus of the Siddha tradition came to me, and they didn't say anything, didn't do anything. They just looked at me, watched me for a little while I was sleeping. And what's frustrating is that I don't feel that I've been doing much ever since my being fried a few years ago. Um, so there's always that doubt and wonder, like what is going that freaking doubt, no matter what. Um, and then hanging on, like when I went into Witness Consciousness, there was um, a feeling of, will I ever come back again? Because I miss old Tom. Why would I miss an asshole like that? But there it is. Why would I miss somebody like and that's very nice, not very nice of me to say, but it's sort of, what am I doing? Why do I want to hang on to something that's outdated? And it's like putting on last week's underwear again or something. It's just kind of a yuck. But it's very hard to reconcile. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
weird. Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry.
it is difficult because it's unknown, right? It's unknown. We know who Brent is, who Tom is. We got by. It may have been a rough ride, but it worked. And now we're being asked to step into something different or step out of something that kind of worked. Yeah, that's scary. That's a lot, of course. Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Let's hear from David.
Well, hi, Brett. Thank you again for the space, and Hugo here in Australia for offering more space down where we are. You covered beautifully how if the body gets too much energy, it can't handle it, and that's ongoing with me. I just finished talking with a Reiki master down here, and she's experiencing the same thing. She's tried as much grounding as she can, but she's still, moving and twirling around. She just really isn't sure what's going on in her own life. But she's seeing far more males since June this year. She's saying there seems to be an escalation of this energy. And I just wanted to cover a few things. Firstly, there was a presentation of a beautiful, within thousands of a second, rectangular striped white and mauve or violet shape with lines going to the center of it, which morphed into look like a vase or a trophy, if you like. And it was so quick, and it simply stayed there. And it had a sentence underneath it, and I couldn't understand it. I focused on the second word, and it was Nascan. I looked it up, and it basically says it was a Spanish verb for being born or born again. The English is beginning to develop. This is, I mean, I have no drawer. I don't know if you can see that, but it's like a vase or a trophy. So it's beginning to develop. So whether that's any relation to what we're going through and what Tom's going through, I think it certainly does. The only other thing I wanted to touch on, Brett, you're generous enough and had enough courage to talk about Pleiades or ETs in your hour long. Is it okay to cover a bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Um, Again, I'm not the only one it seems to be presented with eyes. I don't know whether anyone else here has been watched or feel they're being watched or have seen in meditative states or dream states eyes coming across their third eye, looking at them. Either a cyclops, a single eye, or two eyes, or eyes with glasses. And Greg Doyle, this chap that's astral traveling, is basically saying they're a portal to go through to take you to other wisdoms or other dimensions, other learnings. So not to be afraid of them, but for some time now, I've been seeing these, you'd call them humanoids, or I don't know whether Pleiades or you know what they are, but they certainly have that sort of face of slanted eyes and, nondescript other facial features similar to this. I don't know if you can see those guys.
Hmm.
But they've been for some time, and synchronicity has it that in Hugo's group last week, there was another lady, Barb, who, for the first time, she doesn't know why, she was drawn to make a poster of eyes. She actually cut out silver material, I think, and popped them in. And you were talking about it, and I've seen them, and this lady has certainly seen them. So I don't know whether I'm alone or whether it seems to be an increasing phenomena, and love anybody's expression on that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, David. It seems like some fascinating symbology is coming through to convey themes for your transformation. Yeah, and others are also relating that they've seen similar symbols, eyes. I know that I was shown at one point as well. Speaking in particular about the third eye, I was shown that the third eye is something that's been can be used to see, but also serves as a portal that you can use to go places. This is what came in a message one time for me. So yeah, like that, like you're saying, like portals, fascinating stuff. Yeah.
That's what this astral traveler is saying, that if you connect with pure presence, the divine I am, and go with the I, it'll actually lead you through to where possible answers could be or
Mhm.
experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very
Isn't
interesting.
it? Mm.
Yeah. Thank you, David. And others are adding here. Ron adds, I've had visions of all seeing eye many times during heightened states. Yeah. Yeah. So much meaning behind the eye, the symbol of the eye, so much meaning. Definitely. Becky adds here, eyes are really common in other intuitive practices as well. And a feeling of being watched. Maybe also you're sensing the connection to everyone slash everything. Fascinating stuff. Yeah, thanks so much, David.
Thank you.
Let's hear from Nadia.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Hey, Nadia.
About what he was saying about bottling his spiritual journey up and not talking to most people about it. I'm not I'm not trying to play like devil's advocate, but sometimes subconsciously we're looking for validation, and that is like a part of the journey. But at some point, you're gonna realize that even with all this awakening stuff and the out there experiences, it's nothing special about it. And it's just like anything else, like me sitting here with my cat on my lap. Sure, like all that stuff is at a certain point, you feel like you're on top of the world since you've experienced like being God and knowing that everything else is God. But after you have that realization, it's just like, it is what it is now. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, just living. I still do stuff like a normal person. I'll drink, I'll eat meat. And even though I see this other person as myself, we can still have a fight and it's fun. And you're just not attached to it because it's just some BS that you made up. So
Uh, Thank you, Nadia. Yeah. I'm hearing or I'm interpreting what you're sharing as we discover, we experience miracles. It's incredible. And then we realize, wait, everything is a miracle. Ah, cool. Thanks, Nadia. Let's hear from Tom. Hey, Tom.
Hi there again. Just to be quick, um, we're talking about the fear of letting go and all that. And just a reminder, we talk about how hard it is uh, to let go and to accept what's going on and that ego death and all that, or at least understanding what the ego is and putting it aside. When Swami Muktananda, the great Shaktipat guru who gave Shaktipat to thousands, he when he was on when he became fully, I guess we call it fully self-realized, he peed himself. It was so terrifying to have an ego death, as it were. Not that his ego was dying, but it felt that way, and he actually pissed his pants. And he was like decades of work to get to that point, to get there, and still he had the fear. The last thing to let go, I guess. If maybe when we're in our deathbeds, we will feel that too, because we're so connected. Well, some of us connected to our egos, and we get so much um, energy from it, and give it so much energy and importance. But just a reminder that being afraid of all this stuff, nothing new there, nothing new there. In fact, anyway. That's all I want to tell you. To remind you all, guys, don't just because you're afraid doesn't mean anything, or it doesn't mean anything bad.
Thank you. That's a great, great reminder and example. Yeah. Sometimes I think the whole journey is just moving through that fear. So if it's there and you recognize it, well, that's good because that's the journey. If it wasn't there, maybe you're on some other journey. Thanks, Tom. That's great. Let's hear from Amanda.
Hi. Yeah, I can run. Um, I appreciate hearing from everyone. Um, I I just started a book called On Getting Better. And as you all were talking, I was kind of flipping through and read this sentence. And I guess this book is kind of deconstructing what it means to get better. This is in a psychoanalytic therapeutic context, but I think, I don't know, there's some resonance here. Um, the sentence says, "It is necessary to be aware of improvement, which may be the denial of a mystical qualities in the individual. Self-improvement can be self-sabotage, too knowing of the future, a distraction, a refuge from one's personal vision." Um, yeah, it's interesting even reading that. I don't fully comprehend it. I'm like, oh, I want to know it. But it's like those words are translating something emotionally in me that um yeah, I just wanted to share. And yeah, thinking about this pressure that is culturally and just generally to improve, and how that can get injected into this process, and the idea of a cure and that we're going to get there and arrive, um, and our assumptions of how we think about illness and how that can be, yeah, injected into this process. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
Mm.
But I will keep reading, and if anything else resonates, I'll let you all know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amanda. And that book was called On Getting Better.
Yeah, On Getting Better by Adam Phillips.
Adam Phillips. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that certain spiritual practices were originally intended, of course, for, liberation, enlightenment, self-realization, and they've been, introduced to the West as means to perhaps get better, experience better mental health, find relief. But originally, they weren't necessarily meant to improve your mental health or to get better in that sense. They're meant to bring you to, you know, enlightenment. Um, that's what comes up for me when I hear your quote and your reflections on it. Yeah. Okay. Let's hear from David, and maybe there are some with questions for the group. You can share as well. You can type in the chat. You can share an audio or video. We've got a question in the YouTube chat that I'll get to in a second, but let's hear from David.
Thank you, Brent. Michael Singer shares a beautiful story about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And Adam steps out and he's wearing a vine leaf. And God says to him, "What are you wearing a vine leaf for, Adam?" And Adam says, "I was naked." So the vine leaf is the ego, or edging God out, thinking he's not perfect just the way he is. And from what I've experienced, if you surrender to the soft, very quiet calling of the soul, that's the direction. And so the blockages the singer talks about slowly release. So I just thought I'd share that. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and in your share, David, the key word for me was slowly, slowly releases. Blockages are slowly released. Yeah, it takes time. It takes time. Okay, on YouTube, we had a question from Alexandra. Alexandra asks, how do I know if it's a purge or recreating old patterns? What are the signs of a healthy purge versus repeating dysfunction? Thank you. Greetings from Austria. Yeah, that's a great question. So, of course, as we go through this process, we have this experience of old material coming up from the psyche, from our chakras, from our memory, however you would like to call it, from our nervous system, from our muscles, comes up to be released, to be purged, to be purified, right? Our vessel gets cleansed, gets purified of these things that no longer serve. You can call it healing of trauma and different things like that, right? And so Alexander is asking here, how do I know if it's a purge or recreating old patterns? What are the signs of a healthy purge versus repeating dysfunction? Yeah, so at least to me, in an ideal sense, if we go through a purge, you're recognizing that something is coming up. And what we do is we take space. So we go into a container or some space where that material that comes up is not going to create a mess in our life or, harm other people or create chaos. as well, a healthy purge or something like a period where we may go into purification of something coming up, we'll sit with it fully, face it directly. Whereas the language you were using, let me pull it up here. You were saying uh, versus recreating old patterns or repeating dysfunction. I think recreating old patterns, maybe we're having those emotions come up, those feelings come up, and we're out in the world acting on it, creating a mess, causing problems in our relationships and things like that. And we're just feeding into that cycle. Or we're not facing it directly, we're maybe avoiding. So we're seeking some means of coping, maybe drugs or alcohol, for example, or some form of avoiding actually feeling it directly. So that's just causing it to just build up more. It's gonna, could potentially create a shame cycle and things like that. And so when you have something coming up, if you take space, you sit with it directly, and you put yourself in a container, which means you contain that material within so that it can be processed in a healthy way. That I think is the ideal way of going about some of these things. Now, that's ideal. I don't think anybody has ever got it perfectly right, this process. Like I certainly haven't. I don't think anybody has. It's messy. On paper, it's really easy to write it out and say, this is what an ideal purge looks like. But in reality, sometimes it's hard to get to a safe container. Sometimes it's hard to recognize, oh, this is old stuff coming up and it has nothing to do with this person that's standing in front of me. And instead, we may spew something negative or painful towards them, and then we have to deal with that, right? But ideally, if we can get on board with the process with enough understanding and practice, we'll take space, we'll sit with it, we'll feel it directly, and it doesn't have to recreate those patterns in our life or repeat dysfunction. Yeah, yeah. And Ronald asks here, anyone feel their purges physically? Like mine make me cough. And Ty adds here, bro, the purges are all encompassing. Sometimes energy is released in a cough. Yeah, yeah, all encompassing. That's the word. Yeah, totally. On every level, emotional, psychological, physical. I've felt it. All sorts of stuff. Everything. Yeah, the full system carries all of these things. And if you think about it, anything that we take on emotionally, it's not just something in our mind, a memory, or a thought, or something. It's felt in our body and our muscles. Our body's always responding to whatever's coming up. And so when we're releasing, the body's going to have its expression too. Yeah. Malemoline. Hope I'm saying your name right on YouTube. Malemoline. They say, hi, Brian. Thanks so much for the space. I'm experiencing a lot of fatigue and a purge. I don't have a desire for much and just want to rest. Will energy and zest for life come on its own? Yeah, at least from my own experience, I think after we take the rest that our system needs and time, new inspiration comes online, new opportunities, new excitement, new passion, new space for that to all come in as well as made. Yeah, it can be scary. It can be very scary, especially if we're a person that had a lot going on or we were very driven or motivated, and suddenly we get this feeling of, I just want to rest. I don't really feel like doing anything. Yeah. So sometimes it may come suddenly. Other times you may still have to get the ball, get the ball rolling by engaging in a little bit of self-care. So if that's what you can do outside of resting, I encourage that. So that looks like, okay, you know, place is a little messy. I could tidy up. Okay, tidy up. Then suddenly you get a little bit more energy to do something else. Okay, there's some people that I've, been meaning to meet. Okay, I'll stop putting them off. Let me go for a walk with them. Let me give them a call. Just little things like that. Then suddenly more and more excitement can come online, more and more energy. So you may have to get the ball rolling with small things rather than just sitting in bed hoping that one day like some sudden, inspiration is going to come for some, big project or something. Maybe you've got to start with the things that are still sort of cleaning up the loose ends, if you will. So that's what I found in my own experience. That's what I found in my own experience. As well, Malemoline asks here also, what are your thoughts on free will? Do we have it or do we just allow Kundalini and life to unwind? Yeah, well, this is just a big question, right? I would say if you have it, use it, right? But if you find that there's something else moving you, surrender into it. Surrender into it, right? Maybe not the best answer, but that's what I found. And there are some moments where, I don't feel like God's flow moving through me, and I've got to just get up and do what I have to do. Um, and then other times I feel it very directly, or I invoke it, or I invite it, or I just try and feel it into my body a little bit. I like to think of it like this. All of existence is a big river flowing. It's going where it's going to go. It's going to go to the ocean. In that river, we have a few things we can do. We can lay on our back and go. We can lay on our back and just go. Or we can try and swim to the ocean. You could try. The river's flowing really fast. Probably won't swim too well. You could try and swim upstream. Won't really get anywhere. It'll just be a difficult experience. You can swim a little bit side to side, right? You may change your experience a little bit, but ultimately, this river is going to take you where it's going to take you into the ocean. You get to decide what your experience will be like on the way there. That's up to you. So we have a little bit of wiggle room, right? But not as much as we think. That's at least my take on it. But of course, like I said, if you have free will, use it, right? Take care of yourself, right? Do your best to engage in, operating in a moral and ethical way, whatever that means for you, right? Don't engage in spiritual bypassing where we say there's no free will. My ego is not real. The ego is not real. There is no ego. So I'll do whatever I want and call it God's will. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that, right? It's a very interesting paradoxical thing. But I hope I gave you something there. Yeah, Allison on the topic of getting tired shares that she was feeling very burnt out, but now that she's been resting a lot, creativity is coming back. Great. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, Hugo on the topic of our interaction with others says, I definitely feel as though I'm going through a filtering process via my interactions, being placed into situations for me to decide the new, to heal, to purge. I go into what I call chameleon mode, where one eye is focused on my interactions and one eye on the energy within the body, basically feeling where triggers arise. Oh, that's great. I like that. I like that idea of the chameleon mode. Very cool. Let's begin to wrap up before we all start yapping about destiny and free will. That won't end. It's always good to connect with you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Check out the links in the description to join the community. You can join us for the next Kundalini Q&A. Sorry, for the next Kundalini After Dark meeting, but as well, you can join us tomorrow, Monday, for a live Kundalini Q&A meeting on Zoom, 2 p.m. Eastern. It's free to join. Forward to having you. Thank you all so much for your shares today, supporting one another, being here, holding space, contributing to the energy field. Appreciate all of your support online, all of your donations, your engagement. It goes such a long way. Thank you all so much.